So if you could explain us a little bit about what tonight is, what you're doing here.
Well, right now, especially with the current climate, we have a huge issue with interaction with law enforcement and the general public. So what we're doing right now, especially for members of the African American community, we wanted to bring someone in who's a member of law enforcement to kind of go over the best way to have positive interactions with police officers. So our goal is for everyone to leave safe. That's the officer and the citizen. So there's a lot of misconceptions as to what your rights are and what your rights are not. Things that you can do, things that you can't do in your interaction with police. So tonight we're going to be talking about traffic stops. We're going to be talking about street stops and also interaction with police during things like protest or any sort of unrest. So we want everyone to be advised of their rights, but also how to safely interact with those police officers so everybody goes home safe.
You mentioned it a little bit at the beginning of your answer there, but in this current political and social landscape that we're in right now, in the context of George Floyd's killing a couple of weeks ago,
Correct.
How important is it that people know how to interact with law enforcement and how law enforcement interacts with us?
I think it's immensely important right now, but also just in general. For anyone, they're going to have interactions with police officers. You're going to be stopped. You're going to have, traffic stops, things like that. And what we want to do is we want to minimize any negative incidents. So a lot of these things that you're seeing in the news, whether it's the George Floyd situation, whether it's Trayvon Martin, anything, incidents where people are interacting with the general public or with police officers, if they have an understanding of what they can, what they can't, and just a basic understanding of mutual respect and how to not escalate a situation, I think that's best for everyone. So that's really our focus right here, is to just learn how to de-escalate, learn how to interact in a way that does not cause problems so that everybody can go home safely.
That leads into my next question. What are you hoping at the end of the night people take away from this?
I want people to take away from this that, law enforcement has a job to do. And we pay them out of our taxes to perform that job. And a lot of the things that we do can lead to a safe interaction with law enforcement. There's a lot of things that we can do just as a general public in terms of how we handle ourselves, how we answer questions, how we provide documents, that we have that proper documentation. If we're doing certain things, we can greatly minimize negative situations. But at the same time, you don't know what's going to happen in any interaction. So we want to make sure that we're getting people kind of just on the same page with the best way to make a great interaction in that time. I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
And you were saying that there is someone from the Highway Patrol here in an unofficial capacity.
Correct.
How important is it to have someone who is familiar with law enforcement, is law enforcement, to help kind of shape the image of law enforcement?
Well, to me, there's nothing more important than bridging that gap between communities and law enforcement, specifically minority communities. So by having someone who's actually a member of law enforcement, who is relaying these thoughts and these issues and how to minimize any sort of negative issues, I think that's really important to have them be a part of that conversation. I can research and I can give my opinion, but I am not law enforcement, and a lot of people, they have misconceptions about what they can and what they can't do. So it's really important to have someone from law enforcement kind of take the spear of this and go over the information, because they're the ones that are trained, they're the ones that are out in the field. And I think it's also important for the community to hear from them what their fears are, what their issues are, what they're worried about and concerned about, so that the average everyday citizen can kind of see things from their perspective as well. Understanding goes both ways, and we have to take into account the issues that law enforcement officers deal with, and we can't discredit that. So to have someone come in and talk about that from that side, I think is extremely important as well.
Those are all the questions that I have. Is there anything else you'd like to add to the next question?
No, we're hopeful to get a good turnout, and if we don't, we'll continue to do things like this. It's all about outreach and working with the community. So we're going to keep trying. We want to continue to create dialogue across all of these different bridges, across all of these different groups, because ultimately what we want is for everyone to be safe and for everyone to be happy in this community.
Thank you so much for your
Okay,
time.
appreciate it. Thank you.